Okay, good evening and welcome to Shu YouTube, just Daf It. Today we're doing Nedarim Daf Yud Ches number 18, special Moti Shabbos edition. In Israel, they have to call it Mosach, abbreviation of Moti Shabbos. Yesterday we did a 9-minute Daf. Let's see if we can beat that. It's a race competitive. All right, we're starting the top Yud Chet and Aleph. 4 lines down. We had a machlokas in Rav Huna and Shmuel. When you take a Nazirus, you say Hareini Nazir for 30 days, and then subsequently you say you got Hareini Nazir. So is the second Nazirus Chal? Obviously it's not Chal right away, but after 30 days, do you have the obligation of another Nazirus or not? Shmuel says yes. Rav Huna says no, only if you would say Hareini Nazir Hayom, and then you say Hareini Nazir Lamachar, or it's a little different type of Nazirus starting tomorrow, then it would take effect after the completion of the 30 days. So, makes it Rav Nuna. Rav Nuna asks a question on Rav Huna's Shita. Nazir lahazir. He brings a brisa. Nazir lahazir. We've heard this drasha before for something else. For yados and zeros are like Naziros, but the more you use it for something else, where Nazir lahazir, I mean, constant Naziros chal and Naziros. The brisa learns that it's a double lashon, Nazir lahazir, to tell you, let me go straight here. Nazir lahazir to tell you that you can have a Naziros on top of another Naziros. For example, you say Arni Nazir, and you can go back and say Arni Nazir. They're both Chal. Valo Dinu, the brisa, it's logical. Amash Shvua Chamura, Ein Shvua Halal, Shvua. I'm sorry, Shayachol. Right? You might think the opposite, right? Without the drasha, I would say the opposite. Although Dinu, it makes sense that it shouldn't be Chal. Amash Shvua Chamura, Ein Shvua Halal, Shvua. Shvua, we'll see why it's more stringent. We'll see in a second why it's considered more stringent. The shvua is not chal shvua. Everyone agrees. Like the Mishnah said, if you say shvua, I'm not going to eat this piece of bread, shvua, I'm not going to eat this piece of bread, the second shvua is ineffective. Naziras kala lakoshka, and certainly Naziras shouldn't take effect on one on top of another. Talmud lomer nazir lahazir. That's why the Torah goes that's why the double lashon mikash Naziras kala Naziras. And Naziras is chal on the second Naziras. Hey chidami, what's the case? Like Rav Huna suggests, hakra baya. Why need a pasuk? Makes sense. Makes sense. The second one is different Naziros than the first one. Elav the Amar Rini Nazar Yom, Rini Nazar Yom. Kasani Naziros Chal Naziros. And yet it states the Bryce that Naziros is Chal Naziros. So the Gemara rejects. The Gemara offers a rebuttal. No, lo V'hachal Mayaskinon Kigon Shakiva Elav Shin Naziros V'asachas. Even Rav Huna agrees that if you take two Naziros at the same time, meaning you say Hareini Mekaba Alai Shtei Naziros, even Rav Huna is moda that will take effect. I'm not going to explain why this is so, because the halacha does not follow Rav Huna. But I will get into this hopefully in tomorrow's Ian with Ben Sion, where the Gemara talks about more about the Mishnah on Yud Chet Amud Beis, when we were not sure what a person's intention and what is his real intention. So the Gemara interjects. The Gemara says, "So my chumra the shvua mineder. Why did the Bryce suggest that a shvua is more stringent than a darim? Shvuos take effect even on something which has no mamashos, no physicality. For example, on sleeping, on walking. Neder nami chomer. Neder also has a stringency. Sheken chala mitzvahs korishus. Right? If you take a neder not to sit in a sukkah, yeshiva sukkah alai, it works. By shvuah you can't do that. You're mushva when the Torah commands you have to fulfill the mitzvahs. Ela mishum d'ksiv ba b'shvuah lo yinaka. The reason the Bryce says shvuah is more stringent is because it says in Aseret HaDibros, if you take a shvuah shav, right, which is a type of shvuah, a shvuah for no reason, so you will not, lo yinaka, you will not be cleansed of that. No matter what you do, there's seemingly an insurmountable amount of tshuva you have to do in order to be cleansed from a shvuah shav. Shvuah shalochal, shvuah shalochal, v'achal eno chayav ala'achas. The Mishnah continues. If you take a shvuah, I'm not going to eat this loaf of bread, and then you repeat that, the second shvuah does not take effect. I'm a Rava says a big chiddush over here. Nishal rishon shniya chal alav. If he would go to a Talmud Chacham and he would, or a Beistin, learn more in the coming program, be matir nedarim, he's matir his shvuah. You can matir shvuah also. I didn't know that I really like this piece of bread. This is really nice fresh bread. I didn't know it's like it's Israeli fresh bread. I thought it was like an American white bread. You know, I come from America. It's not so good. Here in Israel, they got fresh bread. I didn't know that. I never would have taken shvuah not to eat loaf of bread. So if he's nishal rishona, he maters the first neder, shniya chalalov. So the second neder, second shvuah, even though he doesn't have to go and repeat it the second shvuah, automatically it takes effect. Now, in Iyut Ben Sion, we have to discuss how this relates to the previous Iyut Ben Sion, where I suggested that because the shua is Nisr Gavra on the person, the second shua is meaningless. Say, I'm not going to eat it. Okay, now you ask for the piece of bread. To go and say, I'm not going to do another action, it's meaningless. Here it seems to say it has meaning. I'm trying to answer that question. in Iyut Ben Sion. The Gemara says, "Mine. How do you know this is true? When you look at Sani Eno Alach Achas, because Sani Eno Chayiv Alach, Mishnah says, doesn't say it's only one shvua. You're only chayiv for one shvua. Rav Kahu Deleisla, it doesn't have a space to be chal. Ki mitchal chaverta chayla. However, in some aspect, it is still existent. If you were to be shoel, your matir, your first shvua, so then it would be chal retroactive. Different way of saying basically the same thing. Chiyuv Deleika. Right? The Mishnah doesn't say the word chiyuv. Hashvua, right? There's no chiyuv. Hashvua ika. However, there's no chiyuv. There's no malchus, but there is there is a shvua. There is a shvua there. There's an oath you made, a verbal commitment you made. So therefore, if the first one disappears, retroactively the second one takes effect. Hilchasa, lamai hilchasa, nechidarava. For what is it significant? L'rava, da'amar Rava, nishal rishon, also lo shniya tafteha. Right. So therefore, we can deduce Rava. What Rava said, right? If you matter the first shvua, so then the second one takes effect. Le Messiah. Say a proof to Rava. Mishnah Shina 0, so monetary Rishon, Hifresh Karva, Manishal, also Lo Shnia Rishon. We quoted this brisa on Daf It Zayin, right? He takes it as zeros, and he fulfills it as zeros, right? He took originally 2 Naziros, and he fulfilled 1 Naziros, and then he was Shoal on the first one. So the 30 days that he observed for the first Naziros count for the second Naziros also. So you see, similar to Shua, that your words are still existent retroactively, they can take effect. So the Gemara Atlash Rishon says it's a proof for Rava from a brisa. It's pretty good. The Gemara rejects not necessarily a proof. Maybe the case of the brisa was where he said Hari Nazir Shtei Pamim in one phrase. In that case, there's no way around it. Then both of the Naziros are chal. Maybe by Shvua it's not true. Maybe Shvua, the second Shvua, is meaningless, like I suggested, or seemingly suggested in Iyut Ben Sion. Rava says not that. When we pass him like Rava, to try to resolve Rava with what I said on Iyut Ben Sion Daf Yud Zayin Mishnah, I'll do that in Iyut Ben Sion on Daf Yud Ches. Mishnah on Yechedem Beis Tam Nedarim Mahachmir. If someone says a neder, and we're not sure, did he mean to be matvisid, to connect it to something which is a korban, a davar hanadur, right? According to the Rush, every neder has to connect to a davar hanadur, or is he connecting it to something which is aser, which is davar ha'isr, which is not a davar asr, which is asr from the Torah, not a davar hanadar, and therefore it wouldn't be the din of neder. So if we don't know what his intention is, you go lahachmir, presumably because savi daraisa l'chomer. We'll talk more about this tomorrow. Perusham lahaka. However, if he goes and he tells you, I said we'll see certain cases where it's ambiguous his statement, and then he explains, no, I try to connect it to davar asr, not the davar hanadar. So then we listen to him and we'll make a ketza. How does this play out? Amar harei like a basar maliach. He says this piece of meat is also to meat like salty meat, yayin nesech, like wine of libations. Imbishal neder aser, imbishal avodas kachavim nader mutter. If he's talking about, right, salty meat on the mizbeach, right, or he's talking about as a korban or yayin nesech that you pour to accompany a korban, those are davar hanadar and it's a neder. If he's talking about basar miliach, meat that's bowed down to about avodah zarah, or yayin that's poured to avodah zarah, so that's isser, so that wouldn't be. So if he explains the way of korban, it's asr. Of isser, it's mutter. Of imstam, we don't know. He's not around to explain, or he's not sure what he thought. It's asr. However, he says this piece of meat is asr to me like a cherem. Im gecherem shel shamayim. If it's like charamim, right, which is a type of a neder we learned in Daf Beis. Asr. Im gecherem shel kohanim. There's a specific type of charamim where you can designate a portion of your property and give it to the Kohanim as like a present to them. It's called a cherem for a Kohen. That's not korban, right? It's a matana you're giving to the Kahuna. So if it's cherem shel shamayim, which is basically a donation to the mizbeach, for a korban on the mizbeach, then it's a davar another. If cherem shel kohanim, it's mutter. If stam aser. If he doesn't explain either way, so then we go l'chomra. Harei like a meiser. He says this piece of meat is also like meiser. Imka meiser behema. If he explains, I meant like meiser behema. So then neder, meiser behema neder aser. Then it's aser. Vim shal goren because it's the meiser rishon or meiser sheni, right? Those are aser. That's not davar neder. Then it's going to be mutter. Vim stam. If he can't explain it, it's aser. Harei like a truma. It's like truma. Imka truma is halishka Trumas Alishka was a Machzah Shekel. They brought into the into the room they had in the Beis Hamikdash, where they gather all the Machzah Shekel, and was used to bring karbanos. So that's like a davar another. If it's Trumas Alishka another also, then it's the neder. Even Nikshal Goren, if you meant Truma, right, like Truma Gedola or Trumas Meiser, then it's mutter. And then Stam Aser, if he can't explain it or we're not able to decipher what he meant, then it's Aser. Divrei Meir, that's the word right, Meir. Yehuda Omer, Yehuda argues in one case, Stam Truma Yehuda Asura. He says, apparently it depends where you live. If you say you ask for a piece of meat like Truma in Yehuda, which is the area where the Beis Hamikdash is, the Yerushalayim, the area, the southern part of Israel, then it's Asura, right? Because presumably he's near the Beis Hamikdash, he's talking about the Trumas Halishka. The Galil Mutter. The Galil, even if he doesn't explain it in Galil, it's Mutter. She'ein Anshe Galil Makirin as Trumas Halishka. They're not familiar with Trumas Halishka. They're talking about, they're dealing with Truma Gedola, Trumas Meiser. Stam Charam Yehuda Mutarin Begal Asura, and Rabbi Yehuda adds that if you compare meat to a cherem in Yehuda, so then it's mutter. Begal Asura, She'an Shegal Makir as Charmei Kohanim in Yehuda, right? The Kohanim were present near the Beis Hamikdash, so a lot of people would make a cherem and donate money to the Kohanim. But in Galil, they only know Charmei Shamayim. They only know as a donation, as like for a korban in the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, in those cases where we're unsure, we go l'chumra in the Galil, and in Yerushalayim we go l'kula. I don't think Rabbi Yehuda is arguing on Rabbi Meir that if the person, even if he lives in Yehuda and he tells you, I compared to the Truma, but I meant Trumas Hagoren, it would be mutter. It's only talking about if we don't know. There's even a case Rabbi Yehuda's mekel. Even in certain cases, Rabbi Yehuda says if we don't know, even though normally somebody drives to l'chumra, you go l'chumra, right? If you're in a place like the Galil, you know that the Truma he meant was Truma Sagorin. And Charamim, right, if you're in Yehuda, presumably the Charamim he meant is the Charmei Kohanim and not the Charmei Shamayim. The Gemara says about Atnan, the Gemara asks, Saving Naziros, of a mission in Meseches Nazir, Saving Naziros Lahakil. There the Mishnah talks about, you say, I'm going to be a Nazir, assuming there's, 100 bushels of grain in this warehouse. Right, and then someone steals the grain, you can't count the amount of bushels. You don't know if you're a Nazir or not. Is he a Nazir or not? We go Lakula, the Mishnah says. Here, Stam Nedarim, we're not sure. He says, this is like Basar Miliyah. He doesn't explain, like Avodah Zarah or like a Korban, we're not sure. So, and he's not around to ask, which is like the case in Naziris. We go Lahakram and Nedarim. Why? Naziris is a form of a Neder, so why? Over here we go l'chumra in Mesechus Nazir. It says l'kula Amar B'Zeir lo kash Har Lezer Harabana. No, the Mishnah in Mesechus Nazir reflects the opinion of Rebbe Lezer. Our Mishnah reflects the opinion of the Rabbanan in the Sanya. Where do we find the machlok? Tamakdish chayto behemto. If you're learning Mishnah along with me, we just talked about this in Mesechus Bikurim about a koi, a buffalo bills. I lost my jess last week. What's the difference between a buffalo and a bill? I don't know. Buffalo's a city, but really, buffalo is like a bill. Hey, a type of animal. It's a koi. That's what I think a koi is. We're not sure if it's a wild animal or a domesticated animal. So let's say you say I'm makdish all my domesticated animals, my behemoths, and all my chayas, all my wild animals. Hekdish as a koi. Rabbanan holds. You have a buffalo in your farm, so it's also hekdish. Lezer Omer lo hekdish as a koi. Lezer says, you weren't makdish the koi because you only said chayim behema, and a koi is a suffix, but it's a chayim behema. Man damar mamon ma'ayel sveika gufin ma'ayel. Right, the Rabbanan who holds that when it comes to your money, your possessions, right, your animals are your possessions, right. Even in a suffix, you meant to donate to the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, when it comes to being makdish your body, Naziris is where you give a lot of kedusha to your body, which is more stringent than your money, right. People usually value the life or their quality of the life more than their actual money. So therefore, gufin ma'ayel, he would presumably in a suffix, he meant to be makmir and to answer himself. Man amar mamona lo ma'ayel speak. Lezer holds your money you wouldn't enter in a suffix. Gufe, top of your Teram and Aleph, kolshkin lo ma'ayel speak. Or Lezer would say certainly that's the Mishnah Mesechus Nazir. Certainly, if we're unsure if you're a Nazir or not, the person didn't intend to make a Nazirus in a case where there was uncertainty. That's the conclusion of today's shir. Now, the obvious problem is that usually, presumably, the understanding of our Mishnah was down there on the Hachmir, something del Rice, and not based on his intention. But we'll talk more about that in tomorrow's daf. But it depends on your intention, or it depends on just the words make a neder or make a nazirus. I will stay tuned for Ian Ben Sion where I'm going to try to answer Yud Chedem and Aleph. An interesting statement of Rava, which we pass in La Halacha, that even though when you take a shul, I'm not going to eat a loaf of bread, a shul, I'm not going to eat a loaf of bread, the second one is not chal, and I suggest it's not chal at all. Rava says an interesting thing that if I go ahead to a chacham, a tam chacham, or a basin, and I'm mater my shvua, the second one is chal retroactively. How could that be if it's or gavra? It wasn't effective at all. Stay tuned for Ian Ben Sion coming up next.